There's Just Something About Kansas City is brought to you in part by the generosity of our friends at the Cockrell Family Foundation. Thank you. Welcome once again to another episode of There's Just Something About Kansas City, where we talk about the people, places, and things that make this such a great place to live. And sitting here today with me is Justin Gardner, and we will get into this pretty well because it had to do with your sister Heidi.
Right.
We're trying to get Heidi, SNL star, younger sister, on the air, and you take care of all that scheduling for her. And then you'd reminded me that you had been an intern at Channel 4 back in the day when you went to University of Missouri. Mm-hmm. You were in journalism school.
Yeah.
You came home in the summers, you're an intern. Then you came on and you basically ended up being one of our news editors there, right, for like a short period of time. And
That's right.
And I think you have a pretty interesting story of how you got to. But what I started to say was we got together because I called you on the phone because you had relayed some of this to me. I said, "Oh, Justin, yeah, etc." And then we started telling the story, and I said, "Boy, you've got a lot going for you as well, as far as just your own career, let alone being, the older brother of Heidi Gardner.
Yeah.
You're much more than that, that's for sure."
Well, thank you, Frank.
She won't let you say that, but I will.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I help her with some light scheduling, but really, I think you kind of you got reintroduced to us because you were at Big Slick. And
yes.
And when she saw you in the audience, Frank Boll, she knew where I was, and she was like, "Justin, it's Frank Boll," because Frank Boll was the sports guy. You were like the sports guy back in the day, and and we love sports, obviously, like Kansas City, amazing sports town. But yeah, I knew you from Fox 4.
Right.
And that story is interesting because I was looking for an internship, what I thought was going to be a copy editing internship.
Right.
So it was between KCTV 5 and Fox 4. I had applied to both of those places. And Fox, I said, I said I wanted an editing internship. And they said, "Well, we've never had one of those before." And I was like, that doesn't sound right, I'm
right.
I'm like what? I'm like 21, right? I'm just like, okay, sure, yeah, and KCTV 5 called me right after, said, we want to offer you an internship, but I'd already taken the internship at Fox 4. Mm-hmm. So I get in there the first day, and they show me an editing booth, for videotape editing.
Right.
And again, I don't say anything because I had already accepted the internship. It's like, okay, well, this is what you're going to be doing. You're going to be editing this videotape. And I was like, okay, well, I guess I'm just going to go with this. So the reason I became a video editing intern is completely by mistake. And then about a month in, I think I was editing the 9 o'clock news.
Yes.
Yeah, so an entire hour-long broadcast with those old AB roll machines.
Yes, right. They had the two. Well, you couldn't even explain it now to people because they just go, "You had to do what?"
Yeah, the actual tape, put the tape into the camera.
One machine, then put tape in the other. Well, you put tape in the camera first of all. Yeah.
Right, put tape in the camera. A cameraman had to go out and shoot something, camera person, and then come back. Give us the tapes. We had to review it all, right? There was no sort of streaming or anything like that. And so in order to edit a newscast, I had to edit, 60 tapes together.
Easy for the whole newscast.
Easy.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and you guys edited your own stuff.
Yeah, we took care of our own stuff back in sports.
Yeah. So it was trial by fire, because there were some nights where there was breaking news. And we would get, there would be a satellite truck, maybe a small airplane went down or something like that,
Fire.
Fire, yeah.
Murder, something.
Exactly,
yes.
Right? And so we would be getting something. And I remember there was one newscast where I literally finished editing the tape, ran downstairs. I gave it to the person who was going to be putting the tape in the machine. They put it in the machine, they queued it up, and 5 seconds later they hit play. Right. And it was on air. And that was just crazy. I mean, it was an amazing experience. But yeah, of course you wouldn't have remembered me.
Well, you're in the newsroom, number one.
Exactly.
And they put us, the sports guys, in the back room.
You were in the back room.
You were in the back.
There was a lot of cursing.
Yeah. That is absolutely.
I don't know. Can we curse on this?
Absolutely, you can.
Yeah.
Yes,
It's like, where's my fucking tape?
I know, absolutely.
Yeah.
Or MF tape or
Yeah,
whatever
yeah,
it would be.
yeah.
Okay, you dumbass. Why are you so
Yeah, no, it was. I was glad that I was in the newsroom because I felt like if I was back there, I wouldn't have lasted very long. I was definitely much more of a I was a shyer kid back then.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it was fun. So yeah, that was Phil Witt, right?
Yes, right. Phil Witt.
Right.
Probably Cynthia. Was Cynthia still there?
No, it was Harris Faulkner.
Oh, it was Harris Faulkner then. Okay,
Yeah,
went
Harris
on and now
Faulkner.
does. You know, she's on Fox News. She's a huge,
Yeah.
huge name.
Yeah, always very
in the
poised,
business.
and everybody
Yeah.
was
Very.
like amazing. Everybody was like really really nice.
Well, it's a good thing you weren't back in the sports department then, 'cause
Yeah.
you would have had a different opinion what the heck was going on.
That
in the
was
news
you, Phil Wallace.
No, Al Wallace.
Al Wallace.
Yeah.
Al Wallace.
I think Keesman was back there.
Oh,
Yeah.
for sure. He was the one who cursed the most.
Yes,
he
right.
was- yeah.
And then Lebo, I think, was also there. I think he was
Probably,
one of
yeah,
our guys
probably
as
at
well.
that point, yeah.
So you were at Missouri, and you were going to be. This was going to be your career path, right?
Yeah, it was. And it kind of steered me away from it because.
Because of all the cursing and swearing you heard back
Yeah,
in
well,
the
it was
sports
broadcast
department.
journalism. It's like I was interested in the news, but then I was like, like I kind of want to. I have an interest in filmmaking.
Mm-hmm.
So then I veered a little bit more towards advertising because in a weird kind of like conglomeration. The ad school at that point at Mizzou was inside of the School of Journalism.
Right.
It's not anymore, but it was. And so broadcast journalism, I did that. And I was like, okay, well, this is interesting, but I kind of knew that I just didn't want like that lifestyle, Because
Yeah,
I mean,
sure.
it is just like, it's a grind.
Yeah,
right?
and it's 3 or 4 deadlines a day.
Yes.
You know what I mean? It's not like you just have to make it by, you come in at 9, you have to make it by 5. No,
Yeah.
you've got noon, you've got the 4, you got the 5, you got the 6, you got the 10. It's just
Well, especially
it's
at Fox
crazy.
4.
Yes.
Because you guys had more news than
We had
you
more
knew
than
what to do
anybody
with
at
it.
that time. Yeah. Well, sometimes we didn't know what to do with it. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So I decided to go into advertising, and for advertising for me, like because I was always very interested in filmmaking. Ads were always like mini movies. Right. Commercials are like mini movies if they're done right, And so that was always really interesting to me, and so that was the career path. But I was always, I was always very hooked into news, that was, and I think, kind of what I'm doing now, and the things that I'm doing with like the Film Society,
Yeah.
and now Big Slick,
Right.
All of it is just it's very forward facing. I've always been very lucky to have careers, and my career path is always, when I do work, it's always very forward facing. It's out
Right.
there. And it's it's all because of Fox 4.
Yeah,
it's all because of that. I really do think it was that mistake, that it was just like this. Because I just didn't say the right words, copy editing.
Sure.
I said editing, and so then I was just kind of like cast into like this video bay.
Yeah.
And I would just kind of was like, yeah, this is kind of cool.
Because copy editing would have been just writing out the news for the anchors who are supposed to read it before they go on the air, and then they can actually re-edit to their own language, the way they speak.
That's exactly it.
And so it was it was crazy.
Probably,
stuff.
Taking stuff off of like the AP wires
Yes,
and those types
right.
of things, rewriting it a
Something
little
that
bit.
would impact Kansas City or have some sort of impact,
Exactly.
or to fill some of those
or to
hours
fill
of
that
news.
9 o'clock hour-long news, because that was a beast.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So when you got out, though, when you started to do this, back in 2000, you became a copywriter, and then you just took step by step by step. You won a lot of awards along the way, so you're doing a heck of a job. So where was then the change? Okay, this isn't exactly it either for me. I want to do more with film. I want to do more with the Film Society in KC, or go that way.
It was always an add-on, right? So like I went to Muller and Company at the time. So John Muller and really really kind of like famous boutique advertising agency. I was lucky enough to have a connection there, and got a chance to work there. And we did this campaign for Lyric Opera of Kansas City, and I just had this like really kind of goofy idea about what if it was just what if we did this series of commercials where it was sort of like everyday people just having like everyday conversations, but it was like sung operatically. And those 3 spots won Best of Show. So like the first year that I was there, You know, they won Best of Show with this these series of spots, and it was very, very like, I mean, the budget on these things were like maybe like $5,000 a piece, and they ran maybe like, you know, 10 or 15 times, you know, on like CNN, you know, late night just to qualify for the awards, right?
Yeah.
And and then like the first year I won, you know, Best of Show, and so like that was definitely like, okay, I'm in the right field.
Yeah,
right?
and you felt good with your creativity at that time. You being able to see things just a little bit. You see things, you go, that would have been a lot better if. You know, that would have looked great if they could have, you know.
Yeah,
whatever.
you know, and just appreciating it too. You know, I mean, like, you know, both me and Heidi, you know, and Ty as well, like our younger brother. We're all very, very like, you know, big movie fans. You know, we love pop culture.
Right.
Right. We love pop culture. We love sports. Right. You know, we love Kansas City, and you know, just being able to like, you know, take all of that, and then, you know, when you're given an assignment for a client, and okay, yeah, what's the idea? You know, how can we, you know, what are like you usually have to come up with, you know, 3 to 5 ideas, right?
Oh, yeah.
You know, and be passionate about all of them, you know. So, you know, after Muller and Company, I was able to work at a startup for a little while, which did essentially kind of like natural language search, and a little bit of like AI stuff. After that, I went to AMC Theaters. They were bringing their creative internal, and that was right at sort of like the advent of social media.
Right,
so,
and it was also, you just want to say this, it was before COVID, so it was like 09 to 15, right?
Absolutely.
You're right in that area with the AMC Theaters.
Absolutely.
Which was still huge. People were still going to movies, or they were waiting for the summer blockbusters and then the Thanksgiving and Christmas blockbusters and whatever they were doing.
I mean, you know, Deadpool and Wolverine just did $200 million this past weekend.
Yes.
So
it's coming back.
I mean, you know, it's one of those things that it just kind of shifts. And I think, like, you know, there's always like that bright, shiny object. Social media and the internet, you know, there's a lot of really good things about it. But I think that we can see now, like, you know, 25 years, you know, almost 30 years, you know, since like the inception, really, like if you talk about AOL and CompuServe days. Right. We can kind of see like the edges fraying a little bit, right? And I think, like, you know, sitting across the table from you, right, having this conversation, you know, shaking hands before we came into the studio, it's like that's what life's all about, you know. It's like the human connection.
Yeah, it's people.
It's people. I mean, think about sports, right?
Oh yeah.
It's like I was just actually talking with my Uber driver, you know, as coming over here. It's like, you know, whenever somebody you know, wonders why I like sports, I was like, well, why don't you like sports?
What's wrong with you?
You know, it's like, I mean, it's like, you know, everybody gets to come together for a few hours. You know, it's like, you know, for a common goal. It's unscripted drama. You know, you have like this human connection, right? You know, it's like, and so
even rivalry.
Oh,
you
yeah.
know, like the Eagles fans at Arrowhead or the Chiefs fans down at, at the stadium in Philly.
For sure. But, you know, for like, you know, I mean, I think, but the movie theater, you know, for a lot of people, I mean, like, that's the pop culture church. You know, like, that's the place where you can come together and laugh together and cry together. And, you know, that's not going to go away. You know, it's like your living room isn't that same thing. Right. You know, you could, just having the ability to pause something disrupts the experience.
Yeah.
Right?
Or a commercial pops in the middle of it.
Yeah.
You know, whatever. I mean, you know, if you don't have it on whatever.
If you don't have the premium setting, it's like it's that. Yeah. Oh, Netflix now with commercials. How
number
amazing.
1 of 3.
Yeah.
Number 2 is 3. Number 3 is 3. Yeah, one of those deals.
Yeah, and then, like, you know, how many streaming channels are there?
Right.
Like, you know, 45, right? So
and I can't get popcorn. So
right,
yeah,
no, you know, yeah. So like AMC Theaters was really cool, but like, yeah, that was right at the advent of like all the social media stuff, like Facebook, Twitter, you know, and YouTube, and all that stuff was like really, really popping. And at the time, AMC Theaters was still, they wouldn't email. They wouldn't email guests with who had complaints because they were worried that, like, you know, those emails would get out onto the internet.
Right.
And I had to convince them, this big, massive company, and I for sure had help, but I had to convince them now to like start posting stuff on Facebook and Twitter.
Yeah. Right.
And so that really, you know, I made my own position, again, with a lot of help from a lot of really, you know, amazing people internally. I started off as a writer there, and then I basically became, like the social media person.
Right,
inside AMC.
and you ended up getting a whole group of film bloggers too, right?
Yeah.
I
mean,
people talking about the film and what they liked and what they didn't like. And,
absolutely, because at the end of the day, like you can put out advertisements, and just
have those clips of the movie that.
Yeah, I mean, you can do that if you want,
enthusiasm,
but really, at the end of the day, like the reason why people want to go to movies is they have the movie, then there's after the movie,
right?
When they have the conversations, right? And the whole idea was like, our content strategy was, we have to get people excited about the movies and about going to a movie in a movie theater. So
right.
Let's talk about movies all the time, right? And so I found a blogger, John Campia, who is, still has a YouTube channel to this day, really, really, successful YouTube channel. And I worked with him to, find a lot of people there. And, we were just doing it. We were doing a daily show inside of kind of like a storage closet out at the AMC Burbank. We made it work. It was kind of like the advent of streaming as well. I mean, this was 2010, 2011.
Okay, it's
right?
a couple years in. You're a couple years in.
Couple years into it. But I mean, like nobody was really doing a lot of like live streaming.
Right.
And we were live streaming the show. We were live streaming from red carpets. We were really the first to do all of that.
Right.
And then we eventually got a studio space. And we were doing live shows every single day, and then a bunch of other shows, and we actually like constructed a studio.
Yeah.
So that social media or that experience was amazing for me because to be able to marshal the resources of a company that big,
right,
and really see people. We would go to Comic-Con and have meetups, and there were 50, 60 people that would just come up for these meetups, who were just really, fans of the show, right? And John has been able to, to take that, eventually the show ended, John, went and did his own thing. And, those were really, really special days because I was able to really kind of see like, how people were connected to the content in movies, right?
And you sort of got in on the ground floor as well. I mean, you ended up with what, 200 million YouTube views? Okay.
Oh, yeah.
And then 1 billion impressions, and you increased their ticket sales.
Yeah, I mean, when you're giving people content that they really, really want to, that they really appreciate, that isn't an ad, they are much more likely to have an affinity for your brand and affinity for, and a trust for you too, right? That was a really important thing for me as well because we wanted to make sure that the bloggers weren't shills, right?
Right. Yes, I understand what you mean.
Right.
Movie could have been horrible, and they're going to say great things because they might get something back from AMC or from the studio that was producing the film or whatever.
And there's always going to be some of that, right? Like there was an understanding that's like we're here ultimately to sell people on movies, right? So there were definitely some like rules of like, okay, like we're not going to bag on movies, right? We're not going to review movies. That was another big thing.
Right.
It's like we weren't in the movie review business, but the journalism background really gave me like a good sense of like, kind of like a church and state type of like relationship.
Being not black and white, gray.
Yeah.
You're in that spot. I'm going to tell you what's good. I'm going to tell you what's bad.
Yeah. And they always had, it's like they always had the freedom to really speak their mind about, upcoming movies and what was going on. Right. Because you wanted like a good take on what this was, and in some senses, like I kind of liken it to sports because it really did model the shows after Pardon the Interruption, from ESPN and those types of shows where it had kind of a lineup, and now that's what you see. You see that like across pretty much all YouTube channels, just this kind of lineup. Okay, we're going to do this for 5 minutes. We're going to do this for 5 minutes. Bang, bang, bang. So
yeah, that's interesting. Before we get, you're still in LA at this time. Are you in LA or have you?
No, I was in KC.
You were in KC the whole time.
Yeah, I mean Lenexa, but like Kansas City. Kansas City.
So you were here the whole time.
I was here the whole time because that was an operation that was really. The way that we set it up with John as like the head of the operations out there, because I couldn't be. he was really running that studio. Right. And I was then partnering with him to, make sure that like all that stuff would get out, on our channels. And then I was running then the social media stuff at AMC Theaters. Yeah. And during that time was when somebody approached me to be on the Film Commission of Greater Kansas City.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's when. But before we transition to the Film Society of KC, I know that's big for you. So's philanthropy. We'll talk about that and Big Slick and everything else you do. But how big was Marvel?
Oh, I mean, it was
how big. I'm sorry, is Marvel as it continues on?
Yeah. I mean, it's. I was always a really, really big comic book fan. I in fact, I was just moving yesterday, and I still have like 6 or 7 long boxes of comics, from my youth all the way up to, still every once in a while I'll stop by like a comic book store and like pick up some stuff. Yeah.
Check out the prices on the old stuff. I'm sure.
I've got some good ones.
I'll bet you got some good ones. I bet you got a few. Yeah.
I did. I legit had a copy of Amazing Spider-Man #1.
Oh wow.
Without a cover, but I had that. I had Incredible Hulk #6. Wow. I still have Avengers like #10. And I could keep going,
yeah,
but yeah, like I was definitely into comic books. I mean, since I was probably like 10 years old.
Okay.
Yeah. So for the Marvel movies to really like come on, and then for Kevin Feige to do what he did and create the universe and the MCU, and then everybody try and copy it, but really like not do a very good job. For that to then coincide with me being at AMC Theaters and then us going to Comic-Con and throwing our own parties. I mean, we had like at our first party that we threw, the AMC it's like we gave out like an AMC like Fanatics Award. And here's the deal about that, like it's not a real award. You just like create an award so that you can get people to come to your party. And then we have a little ceremony. You have the AMC Fanatics Award, right? Yeah. But the first year that we had Stan Lee there.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Yeah. So like we were able to like have like Stan Lee at our first Comic-Con party. Oh, yeah. Yeah,
he
absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, I mean, Marvel.
Yes.
I mean, Mr. Marvel, Stan Lee, right?
Yeah.
And, it's why I look back on, those days. The stuff that I was able to do was just absolutely nuts, right? And it's like, and it will probably, not be repeated. But but like Marvel was, I mean, they just own Comic-Con.
Yeah,
right?
Yes, absolutely.
And so, but we were able to get on all of the press lines, right? And we were able to, get access that none of the other theater chains had access to,
right?
Because we had gotten the content strategy right. We had gotten the contacts, and it took us a while. It really did. It took us a while to get on those press lines. Yeah, and they trusted us that we weren't going to bash their. Even though that it's like they had like relationships with other bloggers and bloggers do what they're going to do.
Sure.
But we continued to get more and more access because they knew that we were going to be fair. It's like because ultimately, like what we wanted people to do is go see the movies. Yeah. So Marvel just it just exploded.
Yeah. And Stan Lee being there and coming to the Comic-Con, all of a sudden, then everybody else goes, "Well, Stan Lee went. I think maybe I should go too."
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I think they all then start to get on board when you have something that has that much impact on it.
Yeah, we did that for about 4 or 5 years, and really, I mean, we were doing the parties to like make to like invite also some of the studios to come in and be like, "Hey, we're real, we're doing this,"
Right. And it's working.
Yeah, and it worked, and we were able to get like really, really good access. I mean, we were able to do a live stream with James Gunn, Chris Pratt, and Kevin Feige before Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yes.
Came out because nobody knew what this movie was, right? So like we were, I really like credit us as being one of like the more important pieces of early media for that movie, so that they could really explain it and understand it. And then I was able to go to that premiere at the Dolby in LA, and just to like see how perfectly done it was, you know, and also to know that James Gunn had come from Trauma, you know, Trauma films, which are just amazing films, but they're just super, super low budget, right? And for somebody like that to kind of come up to do a Marvel movie like that, for Kevin Feige to trust James Gunn to do that, and for Chris Pratt to transition from, you know, the comedic world to this and still bring, and they all brought, you know, their humor and their weirdness to that movie, and then to like sit in that theater in the premiere and see that. Yeah, that's just another one of those like amazing special moments.
Yeah, and Chris Pratt ends up with Jurassic World, you know, well. You know, he explodes as well.
Yeah, he just absolutely explodes.
It was
and
just
you knew
incredible.
it. You knew it. Like seeing that movie, you knew that he was just gonna rocket shit up.
Before we get to the Film Society, I just got to tell you one AMC story, right?
Yeah,
so
please.
I'm in AMC. I'm with my wife, and I love Wahlberg, and I love. You know, they're going to do Ted.
Oh, right. Yeah.
So they're going to do Ted. So I have to see Ted. That's my kind of humor.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
It's just
Mine too.
So my wife and I go in. We sit down. All of a sudden, we see like a bunch of people streaming, and they're older people. I mean, they're from like one of the local. They're from like one of the local area. You know, like Brookfield or whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
Brookville or whatever it is. And these two older ladies come in and sit down right beside us. And my wife's over here, I'm here, and these two older women are here and here.
Yeah.
And I mean, they're in their 80s. And I'm going, oh my God, do they have any idea what's about to happen on screen? Yeah. So we're in there, we're watching a movie, and they do the Thunder song. Okay, and that just gets it started, and we go to the grocery store. And then we go to the back of the grocery store. And I'm dying. My sides hurt so bad, I'm laughing so hard. And I'm looking next to me, and I'm wondering, what are they thinking? So all of a sudden the movie closes, right, and it goes to the end. And so we stand up, and I turned to them, and I said, what'd you think? And they went, oh, God, we loved it.
Amazing.
I went, that was the best thing ever. So it was, you know, that kind of interaction, or even that little bit, is what a movie theater is all about. You sit at your couch, you can still laugh, it's going to be funny, and then it's going to be you and your wife just discussing it or whatever. But when you have other people in it, it was a great experience.
And when's the last time you ever, when you were in your own house, clapped at the end of a movie?
Oh,
you know what I'm saying? Like
probably
when,
never.
like when everybody's so impressed that everybody's just clapping.
Yes.
Right? You know, it's like, and definitely that happens at premieres just because it does.
Yeah.
But, you know, when that actually happens in a movie theater, you know, it's that same thing with sports, right?
Oh, absolutely,
where it's like,
sure.
Like, yeah, that was
if you watch it on
amazing.
TV. Now, if you have a bunch of friends over, you watch it on a big screen, then they're screaming, yelling, doing things. But if you're just sitting in there with you and your wife and no one else, you're sort of just, you know, me, I sit there and sort of analyze the game. You know, I'm sitting there not having any fun as a fan.
Me too.
I'm just sitting there going, God, how did he drop that ball?
There's plenty of like
that ball hit him right in the hands.
Yeah,
how did he drop that
there's
ball?
plenty of white knuckling that goes on with that.
there is. Okay, so let's talk about your transition into the Film Society of Kansas City and what you want to do with that and where you're going with that as well. And we can talk about the Altman scholarship as well.
Oh, sure, yeah. No, that's, you know, it's like
the
Film Commission of Greater Kansas City was the first kind of leg of the journey. And that was, you know, we had a film office in Kansas City for a while. And that brought in Mr. and Mrs. Bridges, Kansas City, Article 99, you know, really, you know, some like top tier productions, right? And then, you know, you have a change in leadership, right? They deprioritize something, film office goes away. And, you know, but there was still a lot of commercial production. There was still, you know, the want to make feature films in the city. And so a group of those folks, you know, led by Terry Rogers, the late, great Terry Rogers, decided that, hey, you know, it's like we need this, we need a resource. And so they created the Film Commission of Greater Kansas City. And it was basically to make sure that, you know, there was a phone number that when people wanted to come in and shoot a commercial, that people, you know, that people from the outside knew that there was a film community in Kansas City. So that grew. And I was brought on, I think in 2009, I believe, to help with social media. and also to take their website, which was really pretty static, and build a new version on WordPress, which is a really easy content management system that is still, pretty much the industry standard for a lot of blogs and even big websites now. They're a really big company. So I did that, and did that until basically 2014, 5 years, and rose up the ranks there. And really, at the end of the day, our mission was to get a film office back in Kansas City, right? And so that's what we did.
Yeah, right. And so you're talking about bringing in commercials. We're talking about national commercials that you're looking to bring in, because we had local advertising agencies that did a lot of the local stuff. Now, some of them also branched out and did McDonald's and did other things like that. But you're trying to get a situation where it's State Farm, which is great now because of Patrick Mahomes or whatever, but in that got progressive. One of those, we'll shoot some of that here instead of shooting it wherever you are now shooting it on location, right? You're trying to bring that into Kansas City, right?
Yeah, bring that into Kansas City. And at the same time, like what I really tried to do is, because there was a lot of people who were industry professionals that were on the board. And so what I tried to do is bring on filmmakers and people who are more film enthusiasts onto the board. And, we created the Robert Altman Emerging Filmmakers Fund that, sent 50-plus filmmakers through business classes through Artist Inc.,
right?
Which is a local homegrown arts organization that helps artists, be better business people and really, make a career out of it. To establish basically like the infrastructure and just the awareness that filmmaking is a business. Just like anything else. I definitely believe that helped reestablish this idea of, hey, to the city, this is like a really viable career path. It's not something where you're going to be going into like a 9-to-5 job, right. But even these kind of episodic things that happen, these episodic jobs, you get, 5 to 6 of those things a year, you're making kind of the same thing that you'd make at like a 9-to-5 job, right? And so we were able to create that, and we were also to do Casey Film Connect, which brought the filmmaking community together. They definitely were organizations like the IFCKC that met on a weekly basis where people would do that and mingle. But this was a little bit more sort of like for industry professionals to come together and network. And then we made the case to the city. We commissioned an economic impact study that essentially got convinced the city to bring back the film office.
Right. And you have to, if the city's saying, you got to spend money and make money.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and I think that's what, they're going to go, oh, all these, big time directors and all these, studios are going to want everything free here in KC. If they're going to shoot this movie here in KC, they're going to want everything free. We have to give them all this money. What's in it for us? One of those things. So what do you tell them when they bring that up?
Well, I mean, it's like, look at New Mexico, look at Louisiana, look at California, look at Georgia. I mean, there is numerous examples of industries just, booming when you're able to give tax incentives. And there's tax incentives given to like any other industry.
Absolutely, yeah.
But I think, it can get political too, because like, when
you're
talking
about movie you want to
we're
make.
talking about a car manufacturer, and also just the idea of Hollywood, right?
Yeah.
It's like coming in and like, taking these tax credits. So the way that like, the city actually had a rebate, I believe that's correct, passed a rebate, which, was a very modest amount of money, but it was enough to say like, hey, like we can give you a rebate if you do these things, hire local talent. And then Missouri, I believe, just they had a film credit that kind of like phased out right along the time when the Kansas City lost its film office, and they just reintroduced it as well. And so now we're getting Ozark, the show wasn't shot in the Ozarks.
Yeah, because it was Georgia, right?
I believe.
I think they shot it in Georgia. Yeah. They had the The one shot, the beginning shot, the
Right.
drone shot over, that is our Lake of the Ozarks.
Yeah.
But everything else for Ozark was shot in Georgia, I believe.
Yeah, yeah. And there was, and that's the thing. It's like we'd always hear about like second unit stuff where it's like it is exactly that, right? It's a drone shot or it's a cityscape or people kind of coming in to do that. And it was always just like, man, we really need that. So there was Steph Scuppum, who was the first film commissioner back at the film office. She really, headed it up. There's some great people in St. Louis, Michelle Bratcher, who helped out with an organization called MoMA. And they were able to really get the Missouri tax credits back, which is a really kind of like Byzantine type of process to try and figure out. I mean, you're hiring lobbyists. It's like there's a lot of steps to that, and it was
a lot of tentacles.
A lot of tentacles, and I mean, it was like a almost 10-year process.
Wow.
To get that back.
Yeah.
I mean, but they did it.
And before we get to Big Slick, talk about what you want this to blossom to.
Well, yeah. So Film Commission, once the Film Commission basically got the film office back, there wasn't a need for the Film Commission anymore. So the Film Society of Greater Kansas City had really been supporting those films when they came in, but it had kind of been dormant for a little while. And so that's when I looked and saw. I was like, okay, well, we still need to do something.
Right.
And I just didn't want to stop doing film philanthropy. And so, I was able to work with folks to rebrand Film Society of Greater Kansas City to Film Society KC, relaunch it, website. We had a membership, and we have evolved now into, we have our own film festival called the KC Underground Film Festival that is really the focus of the Film Society now. We do some screenings, we have some partnerships, but this year in particular, we're really focusing in on that film festival. Because having something like that is an event like that is something you can really rally around.
Sure.
And it really focuses on underseen films, not films with any stars. Really gets back to the core values of why people make film. It's to express themselves, and so it feels very, very full circle, and it all goes back to that video editing mistake.
There it is. See, everything always goes back to
Fox,
Channel 4.
Fox
okay,
4,
yeah. All goes back to
just,
Channel 4.
Flick the marble down the hill, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I know all the families, and we'll talk Big Slick now. Of course, they finally got smart and added a woman. Your sister.
Agreed.
Okay, it's about time all those guys up there, the testosterone was flowing a little bit too much for those guys, and they added Heidi, which
They're
was
great.
just
They
are great
yeah.
guys. They're really
Yeah.
good guys, yeah. And
they really, and that's the thing that I want to just from the jump. All of these people are so nice. There's that Kansas City nice,
yes,
right?
there is.
It is 1,000% true.
Yeah, and I think Heidi said it best at during the press conference. She said, whenever I bring somebody in who hasn't been here, doesn't know what they say it's just like getting a big hug.
Yeah,
it's just like
her
getting
friend
a citywide
Rashida.
hug. Yes.
Yeah, her friend.
Citywide hug. Yeah, I thought that was a great description of Kansas City in a very capsulized form. I just thought that was great.
Well, and people have asked me, in the past, why didn't I move to LA? Why didn't I move somewhere else? And it's I've been out there, and it's not that there's anything wrong with those places, but Kansas City just has an authenticity to it that I just don't really find anywhere else.
Yeah, right.
And Big Slick, I think, is kind of like the ultimate expression of that. We were lucky enough to join Big Slick, and myself and my younger brother Ty are on the family board, which runs,
They run it.
They run it, right? They accepted us with open arms, and it's this past year was our first real full year of seeing the process from beginning to end. And to see what they've accomplished in 15 years is just astonishing.
It's phenomenal.
It's astonishing.
Yeah.
It's astonishing.
Yeah, we were talking before we came in. Tom Watson had the Children's Mercy Hospital Golf Classic for 20 years.
Right.
Raised a ton of money. Had every great golfer that has basically ever played, except for Tiger, come in. Tiger wanted a giant check. And Tom said, well, we don't do that. You know, we've had Jack Nicklaus.
Right. Yeah.
Tiger wanted a giant check. And Tom said, we just don't do that.
Yeah, don't you have enough money, Tiger?
Yeah, Tiger, you need a check? We're going to fly you in. We're going to put you up.
The kids need the money.
Right,
Tiger.
absolutely. So the deal was, but then after 20 years, Tom thought it had run its course and basically going. Now Big Slick sort of picked it up.
Yeah.
Does the children's and start out with a little poker tournament. I think they raised about $125,000 the first year.
That sounds right.
Something like that.
Yeah.
And now this past year it was almost $4 million.
Almost $4 million. Yeah, just a hair off. Yeah.
Right. And overall it's been $25 million for Children's Mercy.
Yes.
And every cent goes here. I mean,
and you can see it. That is one thing that needs to be, make sure that people know is that it is. I mean, like, it's all volunteer. Right.
Yes.
Of course, there are costs, but I mean, like, nobody is making any money. It is all volunteer. Right. It's all for the kids, and then you can see the results. I mean, you see that new addition that Children's Mercy, has, on their building, and it's really, it's really inspiring.
Yeah, and all you have to watch are the kids' faces.
Yeah.
When those guys go in and interact, and there's nothing fake going on. Like you said, and it's sometimes when you see, we'll say we brought somebody in from the outside, whomever, right. And they came in and saw it, and they do their normal thing as well. But the Big Slick, they just those guys, and your sister just embrace that. It's just incredible what they do when they go behind those doors and talk to those kids and their families.
Yeah, and I was able to follow along this year, and definitely, like, that's the highlight of the week, is being able to see those kids' faces, when, like, because Heidi was able to bring a bunch of people from SNL.
Yes.
This year. And them just, like, interacting with the kids and joking around, and making them smile. I mean, there's just nothing else like that.
Yeah.
And there and to be very positive, be a very, like, positive moment in that kid's life.
Yeah. And it's great when Heidi brought in the SNL people. They well, what are we going to do? What is the deal? What is it? And they don't really understand until they get here. And then all of a sudden at that point they go, please invite me back. I want to come back next year. I want to do it again. And then they go and they start talking to all the other people they know in the entertainment business, and that's why the alumni, as they call them, just the names on the alumni list are just incredible.
Yeah, I mean, Fortune Feimster, the reason why Fortune was at the show this year is she had heard, like, elsewhere, and asked Heidi, hey, what's this Big Slick thing?
Right.
Like, I want to do it. And then they were there. So, the list of alumni and the guests it's always one of those things where it's like it's curated, right?
Yes.
To make sure that people are coming for the right reasons, right? And understand like what it's about, but you really don't get you have to experience it. You have to experience, like, the entire week.
Yeah, you do.
To really understand why it's so special. And I think, I mean, just kind of coming in from the outside looking in, and now being on the inside, the show's amazing. There's nothing like it. And there's nothing like the music and the comedy and the skits and the hot wings competition and all that stuff into one thing. Like, I mean, I cannot think of anything like that exists right now anywhere that raises money like that. And, I mean, in my mind, the sky's the limit, because I just think like a show like that with that type of purpose is something that everybody in the world wants to see.
Yes.
It's like, listen, I'm brand new. I have no grand plans. I'm here on the Big Slick board to learn and to help out. But boy, I mean, at the end of the day, that show is special.
Yeah, it really is.
And it's like when you, with as much media that we've experienced, when you're watching something really special and unique. And that's what that show is.
Yeah. And,
right?
and I think a lot like when Jason did Ted Lasso.
Oh.
It was, at the time, the timing couldn't have been any better.
Right.
We're COVID. We're stuck indoors. Everything is negative. We're all going to die.
Yeah.
There's a worldwide pandemic. This is, it's going crazy.
Yeah.
He comes out with Ted Lasso, and it's just like perfect. And that's what Big Slick is. It's perfect. It has all the elements that you want to see, and it's all positivity.
Ray of sunshine.
Yes, it really is.
Yeah.
And for them to continue on all this time, they're going to continue on. But I know you to have the expertise you do with social media, to be able to take this to the next step. I'm sure you have ideas in the back of your mind
for sure.
of how to generate even more attention to this, to the Big Slick movement.
Yeah, I mean, listen, they've been doing the right thing, and they've been crushing it, right? And so I'm there again to help out however I can to be a force multiplier, right? Because now there's going to be more people that can help out with social media and and all the different things that are needing those force multipliers, right?
Yeah.
So that we can jump from 4 million to 6 million to 10 million, and beyond, however long that takes. But yeah, as all the philanthropy that I've done up to this point and helping leading these organizations, because at the Film Commission, at the very end, I was the president of the Film Commission, and the Film Society. I was the president of the Film Society for a number of years until I really did say, hey, somebody else needs to step up and run this thing, because
you were doing other things
just because
as
just because there needs to be different voices. It's I wanted to step back and let other voices come to the fore, and that's one of the reasons why we're now focused on the Kansas City Underground Film Festival. Is I really wanted to make sure that the next generation of film enthusiasts had a voice at the top, right? And now being able to join Big Slick with all of that experience and all the experience in marketing and advertising and social media, it's really special. My whole life and my whole career feels like one thing is added onto another, added onto another, added onto another, and it just and it's not these disparate type of events and situations. It feels like a through line,
right?
To a certain point, and it might be Big Slick. It's because if you're talking about something that is really important and is actually, the joke is in most careers we're not saving lives, right? Well, with Big Slick you are saving lives, right? And I think the thing that's really important for people to understand is, I'm always interested in how, how we go through these life stages and we view our time becomes more and more precious, right? And, there have been some people in this world that have been able to figure out how to make a lot of money, right? And we go through our life trading our time to make money, to live a life, to build, a family, XYZ. If you can now take that money that you have earned and turn that into time for families with those children, that's pretty important.
Yeah.
And so, it's being a part of an organization that turns money back into time for these families, right? I could do that the rest of my life.
Yeah. That's special.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, it is a family-run organization.
It is.
It's not somebody from the outside or somebody from New York or L.A. or wherever doing this. This is local. These are the local families of Rob Riggle and Paul Rudd and Jason Sudeikis, Eric Stone Street and David Koechner, and now Heidi. With you and your brother. I mean, I think that's the important thing. So the family element to it, I think, is what makes it not only special, but also what makes it so successful.
It really grounds it. It's really just, the teamwork behind the scenes to really make sure that things are being done for the right reasons. It's just impressive. It's 15 years ago, this was a poker tournament.
Yep.
And then it just has evolved.
Morphed.
And they have just figured it out, and it's really, it's a very Kansas City vibe,
Right.
It's that authentic, it's like what you see is what you get type of vibe. And everybody pitches in. It's not just the immediate family members, it's the family of the family of the family of the friends of the, and being able to make connections with all the family members and then all the extended family and all those extended and all the friends of the family. I've said it before, but just the idea of this just being such a gift, Heidi being on Saturday Night Live was
huge,
amazing, right? It was nuts, right? And then being on for as long as she has, amazing. And then for this to be on top of it, it's a beautiful life.
Right. And I really think too, just to realize that all this talent, and you talk about the Film Society or whatever, all this talent is from Kansas City. I mean, these are all born and raised people from Kansas City, which is amazing. And then they turn that around and give back to the city, which is all important. And I think that's just, it's just incredible.
It's incredible, but I think it's also, it's like what, it doesn't ever feel like there's any question why you would do anything else. That's the other thing. It's like when we talk about Kansas City, when we talk about Kansas City Nice, the authenticity, it just flows naturally out of these people, and it flows naturally out of the family members. It flows naturally out of the friends, right? I've never ever seen anything where there's any kind of question, I just feel incredibly lucky to be part of that organization that has that at their core, those core values, and is so authentically that, for such a good reason.
Yeah, that's why we say there's just something about Kansas City, right?
Yeah, Kansas City. Yeah.
Hey, I appreciate your time. I know how busy you are. It's been great, and we'll stay in touch. And it's just been super. Thanks for stopping by and sharing all that with us. It's been great. Continued success.
Yes.
They got $5 million last year. We'll expect 10 next year. And we're going to put it on your shoulders. All right. How's that sound?
It's been an absolute pleasure, Frank. I will look into that.
Remember, it's all about the cursing and swearing at Channel 4 that brought you to this spot in your life. Okay.
That's what it was.
Don't ever forget that.
I won't.
All right, buddy. Appreciate it. Thanks so much. Justin Gardner on There's Just Something About Kansas City. Today's episode is brought to you in part by the generosity of our friends at the Cockrell Family Foundation. Thank you.